if you look at what was going on in Black America prior to the 1960s in terms of Black education advancement, Blacks entering the skilled professions, Black home ownership rates, Black-white income gaps were shrinking. Then we get the 1960s,
right.
And the shift, there's a shift to acquiring political capital, integrating political institutions. The Voting Rights Act comes along, and it was a tremendous success. You had voter registration rates in 1964 in the South, places like Georgia, Alabama, single digits, Black voter registration rates. A year after the Civil Rights Act, they're up to the 50%, 60%. I mean, it was a tremendous success.
Right.
It worked. And then the leadership, the Black leadership in particular, turned to focus on electing more Black officials. And the thinking was, if we could elect more Black officials, the rest will take care of itself. Black socioeconomic advancement will flow naturally from Black political clout. We just need to get more of our kind into office, and the rest will take care of itself.
50 years ago, when the civil rights movement morphed into a race grievance industry. And this came at the advent of the poverty programs, where many of the civil rights leaders became elected public democratic officials at a time when poverty programs was dispensing $22 trillion. So they had an opportunity. So you got now a poverty industry that was born.
Black political office holders have proliferated in this country. Between 1970 and 2010, they went from fewer than 1,500 to more than 10,000, including Black mayors, Black governors, Black congressmen, Black school superintendents, Black police chiefs and fire chiefs, Blacks, and in large cities with large Black populations, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta. So Blacks gained a tremendous amount of political clout with this strategy. The problem is that the rest didn't happen the way it was supposed to. In other words, if you look at what happened in Marion Barry's Washington, D.C., or Sharp James's Newark, or Coleman Young's Detroit, the Black poor became more impoverished on their watch. Which is not to say that there's a causal link here, that because there were Black mayors, we didn't see Black advancement, because this Black advancement didn't occur under white mayors and white governors and white congressmen too.
The political power has not been translated into the things that Blacks need, like better schools, more safer communities. You know, some of the cities in our country whose mayors and city councilmen are predominantly Black, they're some of our cities with the major problems. Now, I personally don't think that political power in and of itself is a solution to the problems.
All the incentives politically are for Black leaders to blame all problems in the Black community on the larger society. And that enables them to take on the role of being the defender of the Black community against enemies.
Since 70 cents of every dollar spent on poverty in the last 50 years went not to the poor, but those who serve poor people. They ask which problems are not solvable, but which ones are fundable.
Politicians have their own agenda, and it's not always going to be the agenda that the Black poor in this case need in particular. And I'll give you an example with President Obama. Take education. As you know, school choice is tremendously popular in the Black community, particularly among low-income Blacks. They're for charters, they're for vouchers at much higher rates than whites. Obama becomes President of the United States and spends 8 years trying to shut down a school voucher program in his own backyard in Washington, D.C. that was started by his predecessor, George W. Bush. Why? Why? The first Black president could enhance this program that he knows, poll after poll shows, is popular in the Black community. The reason is that Barack Obama is no longer simply another Black person. He's now a Black president. He has special interests that are nipping at his heels. He wants to be reelected. He has to indulge these special interests, one of whom are teachers' unions, who oppose school choice because many of these schools aren't unionized and don't use union labor. So Obama has a choice. Am I going to side with my political benefactors, or am I going to side with this black constituency that helped put me in office? He made his choice. He sided with the teachers' unions.
Once these black politicians became the dispenser of those funds, the poor became a commodity. And so what you're seeing over the last 50 years, the deterioration of those core inner cities that have been run by liberal democratic congressmen and officials. And so in order to justify, they don't have to answer the question, why are poor blacks failing in systems run by their own people? And the only way they can escape having to answer that question is to advance the notion that racism, institutional racism, is at play here.
And that's what you're going to see because politicians want to get reelected. And when their interests part ways with those of the people they claim to represent, they're gonna put their own interests first, because that's what politicians do. And that is the problem for low-income blacks looking to politicians to be their savior. It's not going to happen.
Black leadership today is pretty much nothing left but hustlers who work white guilt.
What we want are for blacks to be in a position to thrive no matter who's in office.
Let me play you a brief excerpt of Donald Trump himself. This is from the State of the Union address this past January.
This will be my first time to hear
It's something I'm very proud of. African American unemployment stands at the lowest rate ever recorded.
Okay.
Oh my!
He produces a maybe the statistic isn't quite right either. Maybe
no, it is. It is.
It is.
Yeah.
And there you see a shot. You see Republicans standing and applauding, and there you see a shot of Democrats who are sitting on their hands, including many members of the Black Caucus.
Yes.
In Congress. What do you make of that?
That, as with so many other groups around the world, the leaders of groups that are lagging are often themselves one of the biggest handicaps of those groups, because they have to depict the problems in ways that will allow them to play the role of rescuers. And so there'll be no talk about how you can do this or that for yourself. There'll be talk about what we can get the government to deliver for you.
The idea that black political clout would lead to more black economic advancement was misplaced.
The Obama administration's racial politics almost certainly harmed racial discourse. By 2016, polls showed race relations had reached their lowest point in nearly a quarter of a century. Huge achievement. Almost everyone would argue, I think, to elect a black man president of the United States, and 8 years later, somehow, Jason contends, race relations are worse, not better. What happened?
Well, President Obama is a politician, first and foremost, and he's a liberal politician who ascribes to identity politics, like many others in his party do. In fact, it's probably even worse today than it was when he was in office, this adherence to identity politics. And that is appealing to various voting blocs, telling them to vote for politicians who look like them, who share their racial or ethnic background, that is a priority when it comes to who you should choose to represent you politically. Appealing to blacks as blacks, women as women, gay people as gay people, not appealing to them as Americans with a common interest. That is identity politics, and that is something that President Obama practiced. And it is a very divisive strategy. It helps you get out your base. It may help you scare people to the polls, rile up voters that you need to support you, but at the end of the day, you end up with a very polarized electorate. And that is what President Obama practiced.
Obama's presidency hasn't meant very much for the black community. I don't see any big change. I don't see lower crime rates. I don't see greater high school graduation rates. But in general, I don't think that there's much progress that blacks can make through the political arena. And
now, what do you mean by that?
You look at our country and you ask the question, In what cities do blacks have the highest crime, suffer from the highest victimization rates from crime, the rottenest schools, the very, very poor living conditions? They are in the very cities where a black is the mayor, a black is chief of the police, a black is the superintendent of schools. Now, I'm not stating a causal relationship, but I'm saying that if political power meant so much, you would expect, let's in a city like Philadelphia, where a black is the mayor, a black is superintendent of school, black chief of police, you'd expect every living conditions to be wonderful.